how to install Windows Vista. Now, you may need to configure your BIOS boot order to boot from a DVD. So if you haven't done that, you can check out my video at windowsrecoverydisk.com, and I'll also include a link down in the description. But watch that video so you can learn how to configure your BIOS in order to boot from the Windows DVD. Now, when you first load this disk up, this is what you're going to see. It's loading up the setup installer. Usually takes a couple minutes, depending on how fast your machine is, how fast your DVD drive is. And then once we get in there, we'll go ahead and start the installation. So on this screen, most likely the defaults are fine for you, so go ahead and hit next. And we're going to choose install now. Now notice you do have repair your computer here. You can use this to try and repair your operating system, but depending on the original issue your computer had, that repair process may not work. Most of the time what I've seen is when people have problems where it's a blue screen, black screen, they can no longer boot, the computer restarts in a loop, all those things tend to contribute to a failing or failed hard drive. Now, hard drives can completely fail where the system no longer detects them, or they can have bad areas on them where data cannot be retrieved or stored to. So oftentimes that's on the more heavily used areas like the Windows system files, and that's why those tend to break more often. So if you're having one of those issues, if it's telling you it's missing something, a file is missing, it's pretty likely that you have a hard drive failure, and you may want to think about upgrading. Now again, that's a good time to go to an SSD drive and get a little more speed out of your system, because SSDs are considerably faster than the older style mechanical drives. So you do have that option there. We will not cover that in this video. We're going to go ahead and choose install now. On this screen, we're not going to enter a product key. If you have one, you can. No, I don't want to. Okay, so now since this is a master disk, you have the options of all the different versions. Now, if you don't have a disk or you need a disk, I'll leave a link down in the description for that as well. But if you notice on here, you have this x86 and you have down here x64. And if you notice, these versions are the same, they duplicate. The difference here is x86 architecture is 32-bit and 64-bit is x64. So what you want to do is look at your product key, note the version on there, and see if it says 64-bit. If it says 64-bit, you're going to use whatever version it said. If it was Home Premium 64-bit, then you would use this option and not the one up here that has x86. So if it does not say 64-bit, that makes it a 32-bit or x86 architecture, which would be any of those top 5 there. So remember, your key on the sticker on your computer is paired with that version and bit. So you need to make sure you choose the right one here, or you will be reinstalling again after you're done. Okay? And you'll need to check this box so it knows that you've picked the right version. Then we'll go ahead and hit next. Accept the agreement. Hit next. And here you have the options of upgrading. The Windows disk knows that this is a fresh hard drive that it's using, so there is no upgrade option. There's no previous operating system already on the hard drive. This video is going to focus on doing a full reinstall, and for that you would choose the custom option. Now if you notice, my disk is all unallocated space. That's fine. If you're reinstalling, you may see a couple partitions here. You may see your Windows partition, you may see a backup partition depending on what your computer manufacturer made. You can choose to keep that. If you had problems with viruses, I would recommend, just taking out of there what you need. And if for some reason Windows no longer boots, but you still see these partitions on there, then there's a good chance there's data you could recover if you haven't been able to back it all up yet. So if that's the case, if you have data on the hard drive already that you need to back up, stop this process, check out my data recovery link in the description. That will lead you to a tool that can help you back up your data before you reinstall. So if you're all ready, you can go ahead and just hit next. We're going to use that entire space for Windows. Now right now Windows is installing, so let's talk about what we do when we're done here. Now once this process finishes, the last step in the process of reinstalling would be to install any missing hardware drivers. Now depending on when your computer was made, will pretty much determine whether the drivers are on the Vista disk. There are some drivers and some generic drivers, but depending on, again, when your machine was made and when the hardware more specifically inside it was made, will determine whether or not those drivers exist. More than likely, you probably won't have them all because Vista wasn't that great yet with driver support. It got much better in Windows 7. So from that perspective, you probably don't even want to worry about what Windows is going to find you. You'll want to go out to your PC manufacturer's website. So if you have a Dell computer, go out to Dell.com, click on their support link, and download drivers and software. And from there, you would choose, you would enter in your product identifier for your PC, and then choose the version of Windows. In this case, it would be Windows 32-bit Vista. So make sure it doesn't care specifically what version of Vista, it just cares that it's Vista and it's 32-bit or 64. So depending on which one you have, you go there and you'll get the list of drivers. Go ahead and download all those and install them all. Don't rely on Windows Update to do this for you. Okay, so now we're at a process in the installation where the PC is restarting. This can typically happen a few times throughout the process. So once we get going here, we'll go ahead and just wrap up the installation, and I can show you where to look to find information about the drivers you may or may not have. Okay, so we've rebooted and the Windows installer is wrapping up the installation, so it should be a couple more moments and we'll be at our Windows desktop. Now if you have any questions about this process, feel free to leave a comment and I'll get back to you, help you out the best that I can. I've done quite a few of these, so I have seen a lot of problems. So feel free to do that. And also check out the links if you need any of the software contained here. If you can't find your Vista disk, the master disk is the way to go. That has all the versions on it, and you can choose. Plus you can help anybody else that might have it who doesn't have their disk. Alright, here we are in our final reboot, ready to finish the installation, and right now it wants you to define a username and password. Now you don't have to use a password, and I won't be for my purposes, but if you need one, feel free to do it. You can pick a little icon, whatever you like, and hit next. The PC, we'll just call it test PC. You can change your background here, hit next. I tend to ask me later, but if you're not sure what these settings should be, go ahead and do recommended. Check your date and time, make sure that's accurate, hit next, and you're done. Now you're ready to load the desktop for the first time. Now here the system is running some evaluation tests and showing us a little movie while it does that. The problem with doing this right at the beginning is if the drivers aren't installed for your hardware, which they're not yet, your hardware is not going to perform at its best because it's probably using default generic drivers that, yeah, they'll control a subset of features, but only the driver from the manufacturer will have the complete set of features. So whenever you do this, you want to make sure that you go out to your PC manufacturer's website, or if you have aftermarket hardware that you purchased and installed yourself, you'll want to go to the website of that manufacturer for that specific piece of hardware. And you'll want to go there and download the drivers directly so that you don't end up in a situation where you're using generic drivers and it looks like your system is complete, but in fact it's not running at its peak level because you're not using the correct drivers. So go out to the PC maker's website. If it's Dell, Dell.com, support, drivers, downloads, put in your computer model and your operating system, and you're good to go. So once this loads up to the desktop, I'll show you where you can go to check your driver status and identify which hardware items are missing currently. So we're just about done there. We're booting in, about to have our desktop, and I didn't even realize I did starter, but that's okay. Alright, so if we go to the computer icon here, right click and go to manage. We'll say yes, we want to give it administrative privileges, and we'll click on device manager. Now these ones with the yellow triangles, those are the ones that are missing. So those would be the ones that you need pretty much immediately. The rest of them, you're not completely sure what the status is. So a good way to identify is, like, say you have a GeForce card in here. Well, obviously when you look at display adapters, you can tell it's using a generic because it's standard VGA graphics adapter. Now that is not going to be that driver is not going to be able to take full advantage of your GeForce card, and it's just using a generic driver right now. So according to Windows, it's fine with doing that, but when you're looking at this list, you know, it looks like all these drivers are installed. My recommendation is go out to the manufacturer's website, download all the drivers for your computer, and install them all. That way, each of these options in here will have the correct hardware associated with it, and that will allow you to take full advantage. Vista's got a lot of eye candy, so you know, when it comes to having appropriate drivers, that can make a difference on whether your computer runs slow or fast. So keep that in mind. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you guys have any questions, anybody needs some help, drop me a comment. Otherwise, good luck, and I will link the Windows disk, some recommended downloads for software to install after you're done with the Windows installation, like word processing and a video player, you know, the basics, PDF support, and that will be down in my description too, so check that out, and thanks again.